My name is Dr. Perception, as stated by you, and I'm from Hawaii, sporting my Hawaiian shirt. So today we're going to talk about the game of soccer. The simple game. You kick a ball back and forth or into the goal. But is it really that simple? Or are perceptions making it that simple? So today we're going to talk about the perceptions within soccer. So first we're going to talk about positioning in soccer, which is how the players are arranged on the field. And these can be explained by Gestalt principles, which are set out specific definitions or patterns that your brain will see and comprehend into one collective image. So, the first one, not that. Yes, the first one is phi phenomenon, as seen by this ball bouncing back and forth across the screen. This ball bouncing back and forth is perceived as motion. You perceive it as motion, I perceive it as motion, but is it really motion? Because you're sitting still in a seat on a non-moving screen. It is still in motion because there are these flashing lights, these flashing pixels, which are making it move back and forth across the screen, which happens a lot in soccer, especially when you're watching it film or on TV. The next one, as seen also by this picture, is you see this ball. It is the center of the image. But what about the background? This is called figure ground, and because this ball has more detail than everything else, we can see it on the background because the background has less detail. The next one is now we're going to look into actual positioning. Okay, so we have two teams here. We have Ledyard and Stonington. We're going to focus on Ledyard first, and so as we can see here, there's four lines, and each line has a different amount of people, but we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on this one line. As you can see indicated by the circles, these two circles are two different groups, and the one in the middle is a group. How do we perceive, why do we think that this guy in the middle is a group? Because of proximity. Because these two dots or two jerseys are in close proximity to each other, we see them as a group, whereas these ones are alone, and we don't see them as a group. The next thing, we're going to now focus on the Stonington side. They have 3 lines, 4, 4, and 2. If we look at these 2 lines in the back, you see them as a line. This is because of continuity. We connect the jerseys together to make them into a line. That's why we call it the defensive line, the midfield line, and the offensive line. But if it weren't for this Gestalt principle of continuity, we would not see that this line is actually a group of people who all do the exact same thing, believe it or not, even if they're not trying to. The next one is shown on Ledyard again. We see this triangle. And so as seen in this triangle, this is called the pyramid formation, which many teams use this formation. But why do we see it as the pyramid formation? This is because of closure. Our brain is closing these jerseys together to create this triangle that I'm showing you. Whereas on the other side, we don't really see anything because there isn't a defined shape. We can't close this together to make a shape. Now we're going to focus on similarities. So now if we look at the screen, we see squares. So you see square 1 is Ledyard, and square 2 is Stonington. Why are they the teams that they are? This is because of similarity. We see that all these jerseys are the same color, which makes them look like they're on the same team. Same goes for the Ledyard size. You see they're all in the same color, therefore they're all on the same team. This can also be seen as a perceptual set. So these perceptual sets, by me, because I have a background in soccer, I know what the game of soccer is. Therefore, I can see that this jersey over here and this jersey over here, because they're near each team, are the goalkeeper of that team. To me, that perceptual set makes sense. We need a goalkeeper, we need a goalkeeper. To someone who doesn't actually watch soccer, they're not going to know that this is part of the team because they don't know that there's a goalkeeper who wears a different colored jersey. The last one that we're going to look at is simplicity, which is the way our brain perceives different shapes. So here we're looking at this complex image of a jersey, like a soccer jersey, or let's say, because we're talking about soccer, per usual. So if we look at this, it's complex. Now, this is what our brain does. Shoots everything apart. everything gets scattered. But as you can see, it's broken into different shapes. We have a triangle, we have two squares, and we have these two trapezoidal type figures. These can then be put back together into the jersey. Now we're going to move on to cues and depth perception. Okay, so now we're going to talk about depth perception. But before that, we have to figure out how we identify this spherical object that travels around the field. So, this is a soccer ball. To me, I know it's a soccer ball because of top-down processing. So I see this spherical object, and because I've seen it before, it is a soccer ball. But somebody who, let's say, has never seen a soccer ball will see that this is a sphere, a spherical object. But then they see these patterns. These patterns they can distinguish it from a basketball or from a football. So now that they know that it's not one of those, they can say, hey, this might be a soccer ball, or whatever else they want to perceive this as. This is called bottom-up processing. Now that we know what this spherical object that is traveling around the field is, we got to talk about how we can determine where it is in relativity to our body. This is what we use depth perception for. This is how far away an object is from our eyes or where our face is. So we're going to first start with binocular cues, which are your two eyes seeing something and using cues from the position of that object to determine where it is in relation to you. The first one is convergence. This means that as this ball gets closer to my head, my eyes are going to have to converge, come together. They have to become cross-eyed, or at least I hope some people can cross-eyed. And so as it gets closer to here, we're using muscles. These tiny muscles in our brain that nobody has ever thought of before, because nobody ever thinks of the tiny muscles inside of our eyes. They use these to determine how far the eyes are tilted in, to tell how far the ball is away from my nose. So the next one is retinal disparity, which is the difference between your left and right eye. Unless you're a Cyclops, in that case, you don't really have any depth perception because you can only see in one direction, and you can only use your monocular cues, which we'll get to that in a later date. Anyway, so retinal disparity. So I see this ball with my left eye and my right eye. It's different in relation to each eye. One eye will see it like this, one eye will see it like this. And because of those minute differences, our brain can determine where this ball is in relation to our head in split seconds. Those seconds it takes to stop the ball from going in the net, or the seconds it takes to realize the ball is traveling towards your head. Now we're going to talk about those monocular cues. And these cues aren't determined by your eyes seeing different objects or eyes moving. They're determined by patterns you see in your image, which can be a live image, which you're seeing with your eyes, or an image on a screen, which I'm going to show you. So, the first of these is height in plane. So in this image, we see two people battling for the ball here. We see the coaches up here by my noggin, and we also see the players up here by my noggin. But as you can see, these people in the back seem to be higher or upwards on the plane. They seem to be on a hill because there's grass, and you can see that the grass goes up. But they're really not on a hill. It's a flat field. You don't play soccer on a hill, although I wish we did because it would be fun. It's because of your height in plane. It's a cue that your brain uses to determine that these people are farther away than the people who are in front, which are lower on the plane. This can also be determined by your relative size. You see that these people in the middle are much bigger than the people up here and over here. These people look like dwarfs compared to these people who look like giants. This is your relative size, and this helps you determine that these people are closer to you because they're bigger. They cover up more of the background, whereas these people behind them are in the background. They don't seem to cover up much. The next one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about light and shadow. So, as seen in the pictures, you see these two people battling for the ball. They're fighting it out. They're slugging it out, just like in the last picture. But this time we're going to focus on how bright they look and look at the guys in the background, like how dark they look. So, because of this light and dark difference, we know that this pair of people is much closer because the people in the background are much darker. Our brain takes this in and sees that it is a cue that because they're dark, hence the shadow, and these ones are bright, hence the light, they're close and far. You can also see texture gradient in this. If you look at the field, just the field, you see that it's green, which normally a field is green, unless you're playing on blue turf, but we're not going to go into that. It is green, and we can see there's much more detail in the blades of grass up here than it is back here. Back here, it looks like a green blanket, almost like the green screen I'm using right now. But if we go back, we can see there's much more detail here than here, therefore this is closer than the back part of it. So, you can also talk about interposition. So, as seen in the image here, we have a goalkeeper, a striker, and a defender. They're tangled together, they're battling for the ball. But you can see that there's limbs in front of other limbs, or body parts in front of other body parts. This is called interposition. As you can see, if things are blocking another portion of the image, you know that they have to be in front of that person, or body part in this case. That's your interposition, so you know which object is in front based on if it's covering up the other object. So, hence in this case, you can see that it is covering up the object. So the last one is going to be linear perspective. So the linear perspective is an interesting one. So we have a field here. We have these lines coming up, and they're pointing towards this imaginary dot on the soccer field. So you see these soccer lines. And this is called linear perspective because all these points eventually are going to end up somewhere on that horizon that you can see. You can't really see it because the lines aren't continued. But based on this, you can see that because these lines are converging, you know that if a ball is up here on the line, you know that it's much farther away from you than a ball that would be right here. Because of this is called linear perspective. The last thing we're going to talk about is motion parallax in the field of soccer. So the soccer ball is always moving, as seen in this image. You can see that this ball is blurry. It's moving, but everybody around him looks like they're frozen in stop motion, as if they're in stop motion. So this stop motion is what we call motion parallax because they're not moving and stagnant, and the ball is blurry because it's moving faster. It's in front of everything because it's moving faster and it's blurry. Whereas behind them, you see these players are frozen in time and they're not really moving. Therefore, they're behind the ball. The ball is in front of everybody. The next one we're going to talk about is intentional blindness. So I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to step off screen for a minute to show you this video. And once I show you this video, I'll step back on and explain what happened. So the image you just witnessed there, or video in this case, you just witnessed, was the goalkeeper getting destroyed. I'm not going to say who this goalkeeper is, and I'm not going to say he might be in the room with you right now. But he's a goalkeeper and he got decked. Partly because of his own mistake, but we're going to talk about that now. So this is a thing called intentional blindness. He was focused so much on that ball coming in that he didn't realize that this player, who was quite malicious in his actions, came through and just absolutely took him out. Not his fault. Partly is his fault because he didn't pay attention, but because of this intentional blindness, his intense focus on this ball, he failed to perceive this person coming at him and hitting him. The last one we're going to talk about is size and shape consistency. So, let's grab a soccer ball again. This is a sphere. We know it's a sphere. And because we know it's a sphere, we know that if we move it away, or towards the camera, or away from the camera, it still looks like a sphere to you. That's because of the shape consistency. If the perspective of where you're viewing the ball changes, the shape won't change. Same goes for the size. I move it towards you, it gets bigger. I move it away, it gets smaller. But for me, if I move it away, it's not really changing as if it comes closer to me. It's your shape consistency because it's being consistent. It's not going to change. This ball won't change just because it's moving away from you or closer to you. It'll still be the same old circular ball that has been for thousands of years. So now we're going to move on to the anomalies within soccer or within life in general, within perceptions. Because not everything is as it seems. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the anomalies within perceptions, not only in soccer, but in life in general. But more specifically, we're going to talk about how they relate to soccer. First one that comes up is this is going to be an example to you all. This is a reversible figure. You can see it in our opener as seen here. You see this image. Think about what you're seeing in this image. I'll give you a couple seconds because you should try to find at least two. Have you found them? I hope you found them. Okay. So let's look at it. I see two faces. Take out the middle, you see one face, two face. Take out the two faces, you see a candelabra. This is a reversible image because you can see two images based on your perception of the image. These type of anomalies mess with our brains because our perceptions aren't always the same on them. This is the same as extrasensory perception, where we think we have this extra connection in our brain that can make us see different things. Like I could close my eyes, I can still see you guys watching the screen. I can't actually see you because it's not in my senses. This is like telepathy. Like on the soccer field, goalkeepers and defenders have this unique bond. They know exactly what each other is going to do. So, let's say the goalkeeper comes out. The defender immediately goes straight to the goal, almost if he's told by this unknown force that he's going there. This is telepathy because he's telling you through this extrasensory means. The next one is precognition, which everybody thinks they can predict everything. From the Super Bowl all the way to the end score of a hockey game or the end score of a friendly Uno game. People think they can precognition them. They can see them in the future. They can see the outcome. When in reality, they can't really see the outcome. It's just a guess. But they perceive this as an extrasensory, another pathway where they can see the answer. Now we're going to talk about is cytokinesis, which is moving things with your mind. That's almost like saying, I'm going to move this soccer ball. It's going to start floating. I'm using my mind. Okay, I can't really do that, but some people think they can. And that is cytokinesis. I'm moving the soccer ball with my mind. And really, I'm really just moving with my arms. Because cytokinesis isn't an actual thing. To some, it is. It is a value of perception. This can be seen in many sports. People could think, whoa, the goalkeeper stopped that ball to the top corner. When in reality, it was just luck or skill involved. It wasn't him moving the ball towards him. Or moving the ball away from the goal. So, the last thing is clairvoyance. And this is the thing that people perceive things that aren't actually seen by them. Like, I see the wall next to me. But can I see that I'm going to win a soccer game in the future? Or can I see that this pass will work? No. Those are your clairvoyances. And they're not actual visual sensations you feel. They're perceived sensations through ESP. So, to wrap this all up, soccer is a very complex sport. You have a ball. You have players, 11 of them to be exact. And you have teams. You have positioning. But all of this is subject to the individual. Whether they perceive it as the way others perceive it, or as they perceive it their own way. Either way, it is still right. It is your perception of the game of soccer. So, this is Dr. Perception on Perception Central, signing off. Adios.